인터뷰 글로벌 그루에게 듣는다 김민지입니다. 오늘은 글로벌 자산운용사 블랙록의 수석 전략가 모셨는데요. 오늘 이 시간 러스 코에스테리치와 함께 하시죠. Welcome. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, well, where do we start? First, about the U.S. Central Bank. Every investor has been keeping an eye on the Federal Reserve's move. So, when do you think the Fed will raise interest rates?
We believe the Fed will raise rates this fall. While inflation is still below their target, when you consider the recent strength in the U.S. economy, the fact that job creation in the U.S. is now running at its fastest pace since the late 1990s, it's very difficult to justify the policy rate remaining at zero. So we believe it's time that the Fed begins the process of normalizing interest rates, and we believe that will start sometime this fall.
How would this action, the Federal Reserve action, affect the emerging market, including Korea? Should we prepare for another taper tantrum?
I don't think it will be as bad as last time, the former taper tantrum. So the Fed raising rates will introduce some volatility to the market, both for U.S. stocks, but really globally, because you will see some withdrawal of monetary accommodation, and that will typically lead to some volatility. I believe that emerging market countries in Asia are actually better positioned than EM countries in Latin America and Eastern Europe. And the reason is most of the emerging markets in Asia, with the exception of India, are running a current account surplus. They have fairly robust foreign exchange reserves, and their ability to withstand a normalization of monetary policy is arguably better than it is in other emerging markets. And I certainly think that Korea falls into this category.
What is your view on Greece? Although the Korean financial market hasn't moved dramatically following the Greece issue, but we should be careful. So should we prepare for the Brexit?
Well, I believe that Greece will remain in the euro for the time being. We believe there will be further volatility. There will be further brinksmanship surrounding the cash flow problems in Greece, but ultimately will be resolved. That said, it's unlikely to be a permanent resolution, and Greece is likely to remain a source of constant risk for investors, particularly in Europe. The good news is that even if there were to be a Greek exit, and again, that's not our baseline scenario, I believe the disruption to other parts of the European economy would be less than it would have been 3 years ago. And the reasons for that are, one, Europe is experiencing somewhat of an economic rebound. We have a very aggressive quantitative easing program by the European Central Bank. And finally, the European banking sector is on much more stable ground than it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Okay, then are you positive on the European market?
Relative to other developed markets, we still think that Europe is well positioned. We believe that European equities will continue to outperform equities in the United States.
Then moving to the emerging market, we can't miss China. So majority of the Korean security firms are very bullish on the Chinese market. We have the Shanghai Hong Kong Stock Connect has supported the rally, and we have the MSCI issue coming up this summer. What ideas do you have on China?
We believe that Chinese equities can continue to advance. Now, there certainly has been a lot of speculation in the Shanghai market. We've seen very aggressive demand from retail investors, and much of that demand has taken the form of margin accounts, which obviously add a lot of volatility. So I think investors in China need to be prepared for that volatility. That said, we continue to expect further stimulus from the Chinese authorities, particularly monetary stimulus. That's likely to act as a catalyst for further gains. And in addition, we probably will see an extension of the existing Shanghai Connect to Shenzhen in the second half of the year, and that could provide a catalyst for that segment of the Chinese market.
Okay, then can you say that China is the topic among the emerging markets?
I think China is one of the more interesting plays in emerging markets. In general, we see that emerging markets in Asia, including Korea and Taiwan, offer some interesting opportunities. And I would extend that also to India.
As we talked, because there are a lot going on around the world, Korean investors had more focus on the small mid caps recently, and the performance of the small caps were quite good. What about in the global context?
Yeah, this is a very interesting question. I think that, for example, small caps in Asia, in Europe, look to be interesting. In the U.S., I'd be a bit more cautious. To us, that at least within the U.S., investors may want to be more neutral as it applies to style and not really have a very strong small cap or large cap bias in their portfolios.
Next, about the oil. The oil price has recovered recently and some say it has bottomed out. So, how do you view the oil and what is your outlook on the energy sector?
We do believe that oil is in the process of making a bottom. This is a function of a number of factors. Increased global demand, particularly from emerging markets. We've seen estimates for global demand rise over the past several months. But our view is that oil prices will be modestly higher a year from now. Now, given the fact that we don't expect oil to fully recover its losses over the last year, I think investors want to be fairly conservative in the types of energy companies they invest in. So we'd remain cautious on exploration and production companies. We'd remain cautious on oil service companies, but we do see some opportunities in large global integrated firms.
And let's sum up a bit. Under the current market circumstance, which area or sector looks most promising for you?
We still believe that equities represent a better value relative to fixed income. Within equities, we would prefer being exposed to other developed markets outside of the United States, including Europe and in particular Japan. Investors should have exposure to emerging markets, but to be selective. Our favorite region remains Asia.
And lastly, any investment advice for our viewers?
Yes, I think for Korean investors, we would think about having broad exposure outside of the Korean market. This would include things like European equities, Japanese equities as part of that portfolio, having exposure to other emerging markets within Asia, including China, Taiwan, as well as India, and then looking for select opportunities within the fixed income market. This would be how we would think about positioning our exposure within the viewers for Korean business news.
Okay, thank you very much for the interview.
All right.
네, 지금까지 블랙록의 수석 투자 전략가 코에스테리치와 이 시간 함께 하셨습니다. 여러분들 투자 전략 짜시는데 여러 가지 힌트들 얻어가셨으면 좋겠습니다. 고맙습니다.